Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Hubris, or Without Any Notes, highly unsolicited book reviews from invested spouses.
Oh, she nailed it, folks.
My name is Jess.
I'm Mark.
And today we are going to be doing our August 2024 wrap-up.
Heck yeah, Jess freaking crushed it this month, folks. 51 books. Average time to finish a book, less than a day. Mm-hmm. Insanity. She had, let's see, what do we got here? Fiction or nonfiction? 100% fiction, obviously.
Hey, sometimes I read nonfiction.
45 books were romance. 21 of those were fantasy. 10 erotica. Come on, it's Jess. Mm-hmm. Contemporary 9. Thriller 4. LGBTQIA plus 2. Short stories 2. Speculative fiction 1. Horror 1. Most of them were dark romance tagged. What else we got here?
We can do the audio versus...
Yeah, let's check that out. Okay. Most of them were fast or medium-paced books. And format. 61% audiobooks, 39% digital.
Yeah, I tried to up my digital footprint this month.
Mm-hmm. So your rating actually is Jess, well done. This is a pretty nice Gaussian curve. As a scientist, I can appreciate this. We've got literally a nice curve going from 2.5 stars to 3.5 stars back down to 5 stars on her rating. So 1 5-star book and then 4 2.5-star books. So we're gonna get some got some clunkers and we got some rising stars. Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else you want to talk about for the stats? Or are we gonna dive right in?
I think we can just dive right in. The only caveat I will say is we are technically recording this on September 2nd. So happy Labor Day, everybody. So it is Monday. And technically...
Yes, I'm so sorry, listener. I know you were waiting with bated breath for the 8 a.m. release of this podcast, but instead you're going to get it later this afternoon.
Yes. But one of the reasons why we paused and did not record last night was, number one, Mark made plans to play Warhammer.
Hell yeah. One of these days, I'm going to do a deep dive on Warhammer. It's going to be nuts. So also, sorry I'm jumping in, I want to do an episode for me about the book I'm reading from Peter Attia.
Yeah, that would be great. You can tell me all about it.
I absolutely want to do it.
Absolutely.
We'll do that next episode.
That'll be next week.
If you were listening for a great episode, I'm reading a book written by Peter Attia, MD, about how to about longevity and life.
Yes. So that will be the next episode. But also, I was finishing off the second book of the Light Lark series. I was reading Nightbane. Thank you. So I will technically include my thoughts on Nightbane in this podcast because it is the second book of the series, and I don't want to start my September recap with a second, like a part 2 of a series. You know what I mean? Like I've finished that series. So
maybe what we should do then is we should just touch very briefly on Light Lark, because I feel like that series is going to be an episode.
I mean, it could be.
We should. You had thoughts on it. This is why it needs to be.
I have thoughts on all the books.
I know. That's why we have so many episodes, dear listener. You have so much to look forward to.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll see. Okay. All right. But anyway, so let's start off with book number 1 from the month.
Also, please don't forget, smash that like button. Follow us on Instagram. We don't have an Instagram.
On Twitter or X or whatever.
I am on X. I post once a week, maybe.
Maybe you should post my stat pictures. You can now. Storygraph has
Oh my God, you're
it has
so
a
smart.
monthly recap that you can just post the pictures.
Damn. Yeah, I'll do that. That's a great idea. But here's the problem. Can I anonymize it? Because otherwise then it's going to be linked to your actual Storygraph account, which people may then be able to follow back to who we are in real life.
I mean,
I don't want to dox us.
Okay, well, we can figure out the logistics of that. I haven't actually taken a look at it all that deeply.
Okay.
But anyways. All right, let's go book 1.
Book 1, August 1st.
Technically it's a 2-part.
Yes.
It's a duet.
Dark Lies duet, Perfect Villain, and Beautiful Monster. This is a mafia stalker dark romance.
Yes. So I actually had to ask Mark before we started this. I was like, oh my God, I don't even remember what this book was about. So that goes to show how well it stands out in my mind.
A perfect 3 out of 5.
Yeah. Were they both 3 out of 5?
Yep.
Okay. So basically the story, from what I remember, is there is this mafia prince and mafia princess, and they were supposed to get married.
Prince and princess?
Yeah, so in like the mafia world, like they kind of think of the families as like, you know, kind of like king empire kind of deal. So the sons and daughters are like considered princes and princesses. It's kind of like a literary title that's usually accepted in this genre. So they were supposed to marry, and he ends up having to kill her family, and she goes into hiding, and he ends up stalking her a few years later because he's like, yeah, she's mine. I'm supposed to marry her. And in the end, they do get married and fall in love. So I guess it's a happy ending, but there's a lot of stalking, a lot of
bonus, no in-laws. So
yeah, so she didn't know who he was, and he like integrates himself into her life without her knowing who he is in the background, and she falls for him anyway. So yeah, that's about it. And I guess I gave it a 3 stars because I mean I enjoyed it while I was listening to it, but it wasn't special enough that it stuck out in my mind as a
Okay. How about Phantom? Tattered Curtain #1. You gave it 4 stars.
Yes. So that is a dark Phantom of the Opera retelling with spice. So it's basically a spicy Phantom of the Opera fan fiction.
I gotta admit, the front of the book is very confusing to me.
What?
Well, just from a distance, it kind of looks like a dragon flying in the sky, and like the white flowers are clouds. I don't know. I'm getting like Tiamat from D&D vibes from the front of it from a distance. Yeah. So I was expecting some kind of like fantasy, because I literally thought it was a dragon.
No.
Was my brain's telling me.
It does take place in New Orleans, so I don't know if there's any kind of New Orleans type
dragons.
Yeah.
I don't.
Instead of France, it's New Orleans that it takes place in. Anyways, it was really good. And it did follow the plot of the musical pretty closely, but with its own twists and turns to make it a little bit different. The main character does have she is bipolar.
Oh, okay.
So it does go into mental health a little bit as well. So it overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really great. I really liked the audiobook. The narrators were really great. Overall, I enjoyed it.
Cool. Okay. Solid 4 stars there. Might be worth a read. Now we're getting into Dragon Shifter's Mates. 1, 1.5, 2, 3, 4, 5.
This month, the best way I can describe it is I wasn't interested in anything that I had on hold at the library. I wasn't really interested in reading anything from my TBR list or my to be read list. And I was just at a bit of a loss. So what I was doing is what I do best when I don't know what to read, and I go to Audible. I look at the Audible Plus, which is basically the books that are included in my subscription that I don't need credits for, and I was just looking for random books. And so there's a few series on here this month that it's not like anything that I had planned to read or whatever. It was kind of just like a mood read, and this series was one of them. So this one in particular is a reverse harem. It's about this girl who, when she was younger, her mother basically spirited her away to New York City, and she left her life behind, and she doesn't have a lot of memories of her life. And a few years prior, her mom went missing, but before she left, she said, you have this necklace and don't open it until your 21st birthday. And so on her 21st birthday, she opens the locket and nothing happens. She thought maybe her mom would come back. She wasn't quite sure. But then she's approached by a man and kidnapped. And when she wakes up, her captor's like, why would you do that? Like, hi, I'm so sorry you were treated that way, but I'm one of your mates. And basically she finds out that she is a dragon shifter, and she is basically like the queen of shifters, and because of that, in order to create another dragon shifter, she needs to basically mate with the alphas of each of the different groups of shifters. So like there's an avian group, there's a like a feline group, and like there's different groups, and so she ends up having,
I am the bird dragon man.
Yeah.
Well, I'm the cat dragon man.
Yeah, so she ends up having a few mates, and you know, they wanted her family dead, which is why her mother like spirited her away. She had 2 sisters plus a bunch of dads that were murdered. So, you know, they're like, okay, now we finally have our mate. We knew that she was alive, and we're gonna, you know, restore the shifter community to what it once was. But then we also have these rebels.
What is it with these books and putting 21-year-old women in charge of, like, it's like you just described another, sorry, it's like the idea that you would have a society with, like, you know, dragons that ostensibly could live for like 1,000 years, and they're like, but then we're going to make the leader of our people be a 20-year-old. It's like, okay, but just on like it could have been a guy, could have been a girl, could have been a frog. It's like, but from this time scale of your species, they're literally like still an infant.
Yeah, and Mark, I'm gonna tell you here, almost all of the books that I read this month is a 20-year-old destined to save the world or become a ruler of some species. That is basically all of the books I read this month.
It's so weird to me. It's like, where's the adventure story of like mid-50s? Like, you already lived you think you're a normal human, and then they're like, oh no, you got like another you got like another 500 years to go.
When we're talking about smut and we're talking about marathon sex, you can't do marathon sex like a mid-20-year-old.
Fair. Mm-hmm. Fair. Yeah, hey, you know what? You got me. All of a sudden, it makes perfect sense. It's not actually about the plot. This is my mistake, thinking that actually the story would matter, but it's more of a vehicle to have a 5-on-1. So, yeah. All right. So that's Jesus. So that's Dragon's Guard, Dragon's Tears, Dragon's Desire, Dragon's Fate, and Dragon's Joy. You rated all of them 3.5 to 3.75 stars.
Yeah, I enjoyed them. Like, it was exactly what I wanted in that moment. It had interesting plot, good characters, decent character development. Obviously it's a shifter romance, so like you're going in knowing that there's going to be, you know, some elements that aren't realistic or whatnot, and the smut was good. So overall, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the relationships that were formed. I enjoyed the plot. I enjoyed the villains. I enjoyed the resolution. So yeah, I did enjoy it.
All right, solid books. Now, their Dark Valkyrie series, books 1, 2, and 3, claimed by the gods, bound to the gods, fallen for the gods. Now, I'm going to take a wild guess and say that this is a early 20-something-year-old woman that has let me see, some very powerful mated partners that she needs to figure out.
Very close. Were they the same author?
Eva Chase, yeah.
Yeah. So technically I did not read the 4th book of this series because I kind of lost steam and interest in it. But the series is basically about this girl who kind of worked in the criminal underbelly because she didn't really have any other choice. And all she cared about was basically taking care of her younger brother, who was significantly younger than her and in an abusive situation with her mom and her mom's boyfriend. So she was doing like deliveries basically for bad guys, and she gets hit in a hit and run situation. So she dies, but she's brought back to life by the Norse gods. So like Odin's wife, oh my god, what's her name? Freya. Is it Freya?
Yep.
Yeah, Freya and Thor and Loki, and then the twins, which are
Beavis and Butthead.
I can't remember the 2 names. Forgive me, but the 2 Norse twin gods. And basically the reason why they summon this Valkyrie is because, you know, they need to track down Odin, and the Valkyries have an innate connection to Odin. That's just how they're how they're made. They are able to track him down, and he's been missing. So he's known to wander less. He's known to go off and explore, but he's been gone longer than normal. So basically, the gods are stuck on Earth because they can't. Odin hasn't built a bridge for them to get back to what's their land called.
Asgard,
yeah. So they want to go back to So they want to go back to Asgard. So basically,
don't you hate it when Dad goes out for milk and cigarettes and it's gone for 1,000 years?
Yeah. So basically, like, they've been picking Valkyrie that like are pure at heart and like have all these like kind abilities, basically, and they are sending them off to go find Odin, and they're never coming back. So it's very obvious that they're like, okay, well, clearly this like makeup of a person isn't jiving. So they actually get Loki to pick
a Valkyrie,
pick the like qualities, and so they pick her because she's recently departed. That's apparently one of the stipulations for creating a Valkyrie. They have to be dead, and so they basically take their soul from the underworld and they create them into this powerful being that has like basically abilities from all of the gods, kind of thing. So they're like warriors for Odin. They decide who goes to the afterlife. They're great in battle, all this stuff. So she gets tasked with this, and in the first book, it's her coming to terms with the fact that she's dead, coming to terms with the fact that she has to abandon her brother, who, you know, she loved very much and really only cared about him, and now can't because she's dead. She needs to find Odin, and she's also, you know, falling for these gods. So she ends up having it's a reverse harem. She ends up being with all the gods. But then there's also, you know, why was Odin gone? When they do find him, you know, there's like, well, why was he taken? And so there's this whole other plot. And it wasn't bad. It's just, I think coming off of the coattails of the first novel, there was just so many similarities between the two that I was like, you know, I really like this writing and I really like this like setup, but it's just too much of the same thing for me. And with it being so many books over and over, it's just, there's only so much of it that I can read. So it's not that it was bad and that I didn't want to keep going because it was bad. It was more just I kind of lost steam for that genre. And so then I very clearly switched things up.
All right. Graves by Caitlin Taylor, 3.25 stars.
Yes. So this was another stalker dark romance, where
sensing a theme.
Basically, there's these two brothers.
Okay? Is this one?
They're biological brothers, I should point out, because that, I think, would bother some people. But basically, one of them, he's the more unhinged of the two. They're both contract killers, and he is on a mission.
You know, like, I work at FedEx. Yeah. I'm a contract killer.
Yeah. He's on a mission. He gets gravely injured, and as he's like kind of losing consciousness and thinking he might die, he sees this absolutely gorgeous woman and he thinks she's an angel. So he starts stalking her once he comes to and is healed, and he's stalking her for months. He basically breaks into her house. He watches her sleep. Like, it's full-blown stalker tendencies. And one day, as she's walking home, apparently she walks home with like these big headphones on. She can't hear anything. She's not paying attention to her surroundings. There's this man that's creeping behind her, and it looks like he's going to attack her. So he kills him and is caught by the police, basically. So he goes to prison, and while he's in prison, his brother goes to see him being like, "You're an idiot. Like, why did you do this?" And he's like, "I need you to basically protect this woman." And that's all he kind of says. He's like, protect her and don't touch her. And so the brother goes, and he also becomes obsessed with the girl. But instead of, you know, being creepy and stalking her from a distance, he actually pursues the girl, and they kind of start a relationship. Had when the brother gets out of jail, which he basically contacted an old contact of theirs to who they were in debt to but cleared their debt. He basically went back into debt in order to get out of jail because his brother wasn't responding to him, wasn't helping him get out of jail. And he finds him with his girl. So, you know, she ends up falling for both of them eventually for different reasons. But the two brothers are both very jealous. They're both very territorial over her. And it's them kind of making this very screwed up situation work because, number one, the brother was stalking her. So she has, obvious feelings about that, which turned positive in the beginning. Then, she finds out that the brother that she thought was her boyfriend is actually, he had this past where he was stalking her and whatnot. So it's them figuring out their relationships, basically.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to a slightly different vibe, we've got Viciously Yours,
Yes.
2.5 stars.
So
Got a clunker. Boom!
I will
Clunk,
say
clunk,
that
clunk.
in the description of this book, the author writes something along the lines of, you may like this book. There's a 50% chance that you'll like this book. And her reasoning is, I think, because it doesn't focus, like the focus of the plot is not so much on the fantasy elements. It's more like the fantasy really took a back seat. So the world building just isn't there. And it's mostly like a smutty romantic-y book. But the writing was just not great. Like, it really read like an unedited fan fiction to me. Like, it just did not scream published work to me. So it lost some points on that front. The other thing that I didn't love about it is the characters went from like hot to cold in a second, and just really like the most extreme circumstances occurred. So like, just as an example, one part of the book, the main female character is jealous because another girl touched the arm of this guy. He was wearing like a long sleeve shirt, so she touched him through cotton or whatever, and the guy didn't realize that this other girl touched him, and she's so furious with him that he allowed this other girl to touch him. So in response to this, most normal people would just be like, I was really jealous. I didn't like that. Like, I don't want her to be touching you like that again. That would be a normal conversation. But what he decides to do is he's like, where did she touch me? And so she shows him, and he cuts the skin off of where she would have touched him. She's like, there you go. Now none of her has ever touched me. So it's just...
Wow. That's like... Jesus. That's like Tumblr level.
Yeah. So like, it was a cute, like, I wanted to really like it. So the overall plot is that there's these two fated mates. They're from different kingdoms. And because of how the world is set up, they can't meet each other until they reach a certain age. I think it's like 21 or something like that. But he's in love with her already from just kind of seeing her from a distance because he has a familiar. So his familiar can kind of like show...
Cool. So he's spying on her with a drone.
Yeah, basically. And so because he can't see her, he writes her letters and sends her gifts. And every year she, gets these letters and gifts. And so she's kind of like falling for this person behind the pen who she doesn't really know. But then, she's also having her own life. And so he gets jealous when she ends up seeing somebody else and all this stuff. So it's just like... It had the potential to be a decent setup. These fated mates who can't be together for a certain period of time but could communicate by letters. You know me, I love communicating by letters. That's one of the tropes that I really like. I had high hopes, but I unfortunately did not love it. I still finished it, but it was not executed great.
It's fine. We can just move on. I don't need this, There's a clunker. It's all right. All right, we've got... Well, why don't we do a little bit... We got to catch up a little bit. It's been 23 minutes, and I think we've only gotten through, like, 10 books. Uh-oh. Okay. So, we're going to do some rapid fire.
Yes.
Unless... Stop me if you find one you really want to talk about.
Okay.
This summer will be different.
I've read this author's books before. This one takes place in, again, a Canadian setting, Toronto to PEI. I don't love her books. I really... think I struggle with the Canadian setting, but overall it was a decent contemporary romance. So if you like the kind of Toronto contemporary go away to the island kind of come from away vibes, It's pretty cool.
Cool. Twisted Ink.
This is again a reverse harem where it's about a couple who were in a relationship for 2 years, like a male and a female who were in a couple for 2 years. They had a great relationship, and before their relationship, he was really good friends with these other two gentlemen. So the girl knew that she was friends with these two other guys, but they lost touch for some reason. Turns out the reason they lost touch is the three of the men were in a relationship, and the one male who was her boyfriend wanted something different, and the other two did not want to pursue him. So he left them. He ended up being with her, but he misses them. So his goal is to get his girlfriend and his two ex-boyfriends together so that the four of them are in a relationship together, and the three guys are tattoo artists, and she's a romance writer. Really good if you like that kind of stuff. I don't know what I rated it, but I'm pretty sure I probably
3.75. Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Cool. Okay, what about Along for the Ride?
So this is a four-part book series.
A four-part.
Four-part book series, all from they're all standalones, but they're all kind of have the same theme, and I did read them sprinkled throughout this month. So the premise of the stories are that there's some kind of a hitchhiking situation, and it's a dark romance, often involved with some kind of a serial killer or killer for hire, or some kind of a dark male character with a typically innocent, quote unquote, woman who had some kind of a sad, tragic backstory. So the first one, if I recall correctly, the Along for the Ride is basically about this girl. She ran away from an abusive home situation and basically ended up being picked up by a wealthy man who got her hooked on drugs and basically had her become his girlfriend, and she couldn't get away from him because she was dependent on him for money and for drugs. And so eventually, after he beats her really badly and she thinks she's gonna die, she does find the will to escape, and in her attempt to try and flee her abusive relationship, she ends up stealing a car and finding these two guys who are hitchhiking, and she thinks, oh, like, you know, maybe this will give me some good karma. Turns out the two guys are contract brother killers who are super, super vicious, and she ends up basically being kidnapped by them and then ends up also having sex with them. So yeah, it's another dark romance.
Woof. Okay. Book 2. Do you want to break down books 2, 3, and 4? Or
I did read them over the month. So the first one, which one is it called? I think it's called Hitched.
Yeah, Hitched.
Basically about this guy, he escapes from jail, and a woman who was with an abusive husband, and she pulls off on the side of the road because it's pouring rain, and he knocks on her window and asks for a ride. Again, he's an escaped convict, so he holds her at gunpoint, makes her drive him. He's trying to get her to drive him basically to Mexico, but along the way they end up falling for each other, and he actually then turns around, goes back, kills her husband, and they kind of ride off into the sunset together.
Jesus. Okay, and then number 2 was the drug one?
Yes.
Okay, and then number 3, Driving My Obsession.
So this one, the main female character is a stripper, and the male character is he does like fighting, like underground fighting, like illegal fighting, and he hates prostitutes. And so the reason why he hates them is his mother was a prostitute, and he had a abusive mother, and so he decides that he wants to kill a prostitute, and he just so happens to pick this one girl who she used to be a dancer, but due to an injury could no longer do ballet, so she turned to stripping when her family abandoned her, and he basically starts stalking her and literally mind fucking with her, and they end up falling for each other too.
Good lord. Okay. Well, you gave that one 2.75 stars. So
it wasn't the greatest.
No, and then Across State Lines, that's 2.5 stars. That's the worst of them.
This one it focused a lot on humiliation and that kind of kinky stuff, like the more like oh my god, it's the D word that I'm thinking, when they degrade you. There's a huge age gap as well. He's like 40, she's like maybe 21, and he's a serial killer. He has multiple personalities, which is honestly the best part of the book. Believe it or not, his three distinct personalities made the book for me. It's why I kept reading.
Only because one of them was Ryan Gosling.
No, they all were very different. One was very caring, one was very like sexually deviant, and the other was a killer. So it was interesting to see, that number one in a book, and number two, to see these three individuals basically fall for the same girl within one body was very interesting. But the actual sexual acts weren't my cup of tea, which is why it got a low rating.
Okay. Completely off track, out of that world, now into Ghost Alpha Unit number 1, Feral Omega.
Okay, so I don't even know how I came across this book.
You gave it 4 stars.
I really liked it. Okay, so it was about this Omega who, in the society, Omegas are basically seen as like kind of lower class citizens, and they are basically taught that they need to be obedient, and if they're not, they're basically sent to this like boarding school to teach obedience, and it's very abusive at this school. This girl, however, she refuses to break, so she's deemed to be a feral Omega. Then there's this group of alphas which in this world, alphas are basically in packs with other alphas, which is not something that I've ever really read before in an ABO. But in this one, it's a bunch of alphas who are in like this pack, and because of the dystopian world that they live in, they're all soldiers, and they're in a group, like a special force called the Ghosts, and basically they're like the top assassins of the army. They're all very feral. They're all very like, one's a serial killer, one's a doctor who, questionable doctor morals, and they all have their own distinct personalities. And so because they're all feral and don't, they're very violent, they think having an Omega will tame them. But a tame little docile Omega they basically like tear into this girl and completely ruin her. So they're like, well, we don't like, since Omegas are precious and this one's feral and we don't think we can help them, let's basically send her to these vicious alphas and maybe they'll be able to tame her, when in reality they all kind of, she's the missing link to them. And hopefully as the plot progresses, this is the first book of a series, the rest of the books have yet to come out, it seems like, she's slowly learning to trust and heal some of her wounds. So it ended up being way better than I thought it was going to be, and I'm really excited to read the next book. Okay,
all right. Now a series of clunkers. Nah, maybe not clunkers, but you gave him 2.5 and 2.75 stars. The Possessing Her series.
Oh, okay.
Books
so
1 and
again,
2.
This was one that I had heard really good things about. It's another like stalker romance, but
you sound like a Dexter kick or something.
I was a bit on a stalker dark romance kick. This one fell so flat for me. I actually skimmed most of the second book because I just wanted to get it done. I did want to know how it ended, but not enough to really care for it, and it just was a total downer for me. I just didn't find it realistic, and the decisions that were made, like, okay, I get it, there's a lot of decisions that aren't going to be great in these types of genres, but this one was just so far, like, it just kept taking me out of the story because it was just so dumb. I couldn't get into it.
Okay all right. I mean, it happens. Yeah. Sometimes you can suspend your disbelief, and there's a certain point where you're like, no, but why did you do this?
Yeah. Like, I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the plot. I didn't like, there was just nothing about it that really saved it for me.
Okay. All right. This one seems like it's coming way out of left field. Mead Mishaps, book number 1. That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. Okay, so this has been on my TV Red list for a very, very, very long time. And I didn't really know what it was about. It's a 3-part series, but look at that title. Like, doesn't that make you want to read it? Think of a D&D world where there's this girl who is basically, she's a cinnamon farmer, okay? So she's a spice farmer, and she gets super drunk one day, and she's stumbling home drunk, and a demon attacks her. And somehow Cinnamon tames demons, so he basically thanks her for saving him from this like lust
like craze that she was under. And he ends up basically being like, yeah, now we need to go on a mission to save the world from this evil lich who you think is a goddess, and I need you to basically go to all her temples and destroy like her what's the thing that liches have to,
the phylacteries.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
that's basically the plot, and they end up falling for each other. There's some spicy romance, and it was really funny. So overall, a pretty good book.
Dang. All right. Well, dear listener, that brings us to August 15th of this month in terms of the books Jess has read. Seeing as we're coming up on about 35 minutes and our child is off and on crying, we took a gamble and tried recording an episode during nap time.
And nap time is not going well.
Not going well at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually break this into a 2-part series since we're basically perfectly halfway through. So you can look forward to this episode coming out right away, and we'll probably have the next one slated to release shortly after, and hopefully we'll record the remainder of this episode later tonight. So this is bye for now. But Jess, why don't you hit us with that classic ending with the understanding that we're going to pick it right back up.
Dark Stalker romances are great.
Oh,